It's time for a reality check.
We're here to deconstruct health and fitness trends and provide tangible advice so you can become 1% better with each choice starting today.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Today, we are going to talk about a really fun topic, and I know that Coach Jessie is going to nerd out so hard on this one, and she is so ready, but we are going to talk about how to structure your workouts, and this is for structuring them depending on what your goal is overall. This is structuring it based on number of days that you work out per week, beginner, not beginner, all of those things. There's a lot of components. We're going to try to squeeze as much as we can into this episode because I know this could be a really long one, but I did want to share before we jump in. Jessie actually ran an incredible workshop sometime last year, 2023, and it was a build your own workout workshop. And it actually walked you through a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So that is going to be linked in this episode. So I wanted to share that. It's $19.99. It's worth every penny and honestly well beyond what it's priced at. So that is linked in the podcast episode, and I'll make sure that's in there for you guys. But I wanted to share that before we jumped in. So are we ready? Are we ready for this topic?
We're ready. We're so ready. I'm ready. I don't know. Okay. So I guess I'll start big picture. When we exercise, our bodies adapt to whatever stressor we're giving it. We need to give ourselves some stressor in order to adapt. So regardless of your goal, whether your goal is strength, whether your goal is to build some muscle to look toned, whether your goal is endurance to run a marathon, you have to progressively overload to get better at any of those things, okay? So in terms of what we're going to talk about here, we're primarily going to talk about strength training and building muscle. The reason that we're talking about those two outcomes is because most women come to us because they want to change their physique, or they just want to get healthier and have a faster metabolism. Putting muscle on our frame and the act of strength training and resistance training actually elicits that specific adaptation. So anything we're talking about here, that's kind of the goal that we're going after. Again, if your goal is something different, if it is sport related or skill related or cardio related, you still have to apply the principles of progressive overload.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to talk about here. And now both of us have very different backgrounds. I kind of different, kind of same in terms of our weightlifting history. I started with back when bodybuilding.com had Body Space, and I followed Jamie Eason's free bodybuilding programs, and I just did them in my boyfriend's basement. And so I started with those, and then I got to this place where I found these YouTube videos online, and I was doing HIIT workouts all the time, and I was like, man, these work the best because I look so lean. I'm burning so many calories, and we've both gone through so many different phases before we knew better in terms of why those things were working. And Jill, do you want to talk about kind of your background in terms of exercise? Because I think now both of us train very differently than how we used to train.
Oh my gosh, it's actually comical to look back. So, I mean, if I'm going way back, I absolutely, I ran cross country in high school, and I also played soccer, and I did not weight train until my early 20s at all, but I didn't think I needed to. I thought that was for men, and I very much ran to burn calories. I would put, gosh, I don't even remember what it's called, you guys. It's so embarrassing. But those creams that you can rub on your stomach and they make you sweat more and you think you're getting abs kind of thing. I thought I was burning fat in that area by putting this on. I'm shameful even saying these words out loud. But that's where I started. So that was the very beginning. And then I am very fortunate that I found a really incredible personal trainer the day I said, I'm going to do this thing. And you guys, I went from doing that shit to I'm going to compete in bodybuilding. It was a very sharp left after that time of my life, pregnancy and other things in between. But all of that being said, I'm very grateful to have interacted with a very skilled and knowledgeable personal trainer in the beginning. I mean, this man made me squat with a PVC pipe for weeks, and I was so annoyed because I was like, "There's no way this is doing anything."
That makes my trainer heart so happy to hear. Those kinds of trainers are few and far between.
Yes, and I would get bored, and I would be like, "I'm not tired in this workout," and he did it to me with overhead press too, with a PVC pipe, and I was like, "What is this doing?" And of course, in the moment, I was like, "Why am I paying this guy? He's just trying to drag this out." I swear to God, that was what I thought is he just wants me to keep paying him because if he gets me results fast, then I'm going to leave. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, God bless that man. He put up with my complaints all through so many workouts. But I would say, do I do cardio after my workout? And he's like, I mean, you can go walk if you want. And I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, I was so annoyed. And obviously now my training is so very different. I mean, I trained once I got into the bodybuilding space and I stupidly shifted away from him and thought I knew better. I was training, upwards of 2 hours a day, 6 days a week during these bodybuilding periods. Now, I will say that is its own little thing, right? Like you do have to train differently and you do have to train a lot in those scenarios. Not as much as I thought I did, right? I was doing so much cardio. And I will say, I'm absolutely not saying that you won't lose weight if you go to the gym 2 hours a day. Will you feel horrible? Probably.
Will your metabolism down regulate and then
Yes.
You're going to have to go more and more and more and you're not going to be able to keep it off? Also, yes.
Right. Yeah. And I had no idea, right? I just thought the more the better. I want better results and I want them faster. So I have to do more. And that was very much the mindset I operated from for such a long time. Naturally, I got burnt out. I ended up after that not working out for like an entire year. And it showed, right? Because metabolically, I was in a terrible place. I was adapted to such a ridiculous amount of exercise that I cold turkey stopped. I gained 20 pounds literally within like a month. It was a disaster. To now, obviously, I train, sure, for physique, right? Like that's always going to be an emphasis for me because it makes me feel good, right? I want to look good. I want to feel good, just like everybody else. But I absolutely train now for health and mobility and function now. And that's the mindset. And I think, honestly, when you get to that point, it totally changes the way that you approach workouts in the best way possible. So yeah, that was kind of my long-winded explanation of where I started to now. And it's actually really funny to reflect back on because, dear God, I think about some of the things that I did and I'm like, what was I doing?
Yeah, I kind of train similar to how you're saying you train now too, where it's like, my goal is to be healthy. My goal is to maintain my physique while doing less.
Yes.
Like as little as possible to maintain and be healthy and be mobile and be strong is really where I'm at right now. I want to be realistic with like, okay, I have kids now. I'm at a different season of life. I can't work out 6 days a week. How can I get the biggest bang for my buck in my 3 days a week? Sometimes 4 if it's a great week, but like bare minimum 2 to 3. How can I really maximize my time working out? Not just for strength and aesthetics, but also for mobility, for keeping my body free of pain, all of that good stuff. So when we're talking about programming here, that's what we're going to talk about. So I guess getting into it, something that we look at overall is going to be how many hard sets per week you are working per muscle group or per function. So when people ask me like, well, how many days a week is ideal? Or how long should my workout be? Like, I'm going to say it depends over and over and over again, because it depends on how many sets you're doing of that exercise. It depends what do your other workouts in the week look like.
Yep.
It depends on your rest in between each workout. Yeah. So for most people, I start them by saying like, how many days a week can you be very consistent with on your worst week? And by worst week, I shouldn't say worst week, but on your least consistent week, how many days can you be consistent with? Because everybody signs up to coach with us. And
I'm going to work out 5 days.
6 days a week. And I'm like, I don't work out 5 days a week, but like, sure. You're right now you're working out 0 days a week, like time out, let's dial it back. So realistically, if you are only working out 2 or 3 days a week, we're both going to suggest that you do full body workouts rather than like a bodybuilding style muscle group split. You're not doing a quad day, a shoulder day, a chest day, a back day, because realistically, you're just not going to hit all the sets as many times as you need to per muscle group. So we're going to hit your full body and we're going to hit every function also, because that's important. We're not just plopping you on a leg extension and hamstring curl machine. We want you to learn how to squat and hinge and be able to pick up your kids and reach into cabinets for the rest of your life. So for those full body days, the movements, you'll hear me talk a lot about like the big 5. The most important functions that I want us to be hitting in those 2 full body days, or ideally 3 guys, 3 full body days a week would be your squat, some squat variation, some hinge variation. So think like deadlift or a hip thrust, some sort of push movement, some sort of pull movement, And I like to include overhead, an overhead press, and then some sort of rotational movement. And the rotation is really for function, not for aesthetics at all here. So those are the things that we like to include in a full body workout 3 times a week. Now, once you have those 3 times a week figured out in terms of what you're doing, which exercises, and then how many sets and reps you're doing of each, now you want to follow that exact same program for 4 to 6 weeks. And I know we have a lot of clients who want to bang their heads against the wall because they're like, what do you mean? I don't get to change it up every single day. I'm so good at the gym. And eventually it starts to become a fun thing because you start to notice the wins little week over week. You're like, oh my gosh, I got a little stronger, or I got a little deeper in my squat.
It's less about the boredom and doing something different and more about, oh shit, I'm up 20 pounds on this lift from the first time I tried it.
I'm competing with myself. It becomes fun in that way. So, so effective wise, we actually want to stay with that phase for 4 to 6 weeks, then change it up so that you can progressively overload within that. And when we talk about progressive overload, like it doesn't have to just be in weight. You're not always going to go heavier and heavier each week. Like there's lots of ways to progressively overload.
Which isn't realistic either, right? To increase the weight on every single lift every single week. But, we focus more on initially your form, right? Because I don't want anybody increasing their weight if their deadlift looks absolutely atrocious, right? And they're not going through the movement properly. So, we talk about, and actually tempo lifting is, and we'll kind of go through, I feel like we should go through from like beginner to like advanced at this point, but that's something that I'm incorporating now. And I think it's really fun to progress in that way because I'm very much, I can be like a little meathead. Like I get frustrated when I don't increase the weights, which obviously I know better, but it's just how I'd like to train, right? And I do like to train that way. And it's funny, us coaches talk about how like the 12 to 15 rep range, I'm like, God bless, like I needed this type of adaptation right now. Like
cardio,
right? Yeah, it feels like cardio to me because I like that 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 rep range. But anyway, initially, like she said, especially if you're a beginner or you've been out of the game for a second, you really have to decide first, what can I stick to realistically? Because that's what's going to determine how we structure these, right? In terms of how you lay it out. So I do love the 3 days a week full body. It's honestly how I trained for like a year because I knew that was realistically the best thing that I could commit to. And even if I only fell back on 2, I still got a solid number of sets per muscle group to, even if I wasn't progressing fully, to maintain, right? I didn't just cold turkey not lift. So I love full body training for beginners or just for that 2 to 3 day week split and those time constraints. And I don't know.
Anybody who like is living real life. Like I have kids. So that's how I train now because it's like in an ideal world, I get 4 lifts in. Maybe I do 2 full body and then a push and a pull, or 2 full body and an upper and a lower. But again, like Jill said, if I only get 2 days in that week because stuff comes up, kids get sick, life happens, like, cool. I hit every muscle group at least twice. Like I'm still ahead of most people.
Yeah. And I actually, even with 4 days a week, so right now I have 4 lifts and actually my 5th day is just yoga, active recovery type of day. But I love to always have 1 full body lift because that's my safety net. Shit hits the fan, I can at least hit full body once this week. And that's like my absolute, like Jess said, at my worst. That's my worst case scenario for lifting. Now at the phase I'm in my life, I absolutely can do 3 days a week, right? Like that's not an issue for me. But I had seasons of life over the last 2 years where like 1 just felt daunting to me. And I think if you're in that headspace, just do 1 for right now, right? Like just do 1 full body and work up from there. And that's why I think it's the best starting point when it comes to timeline for sure. And I think, we kind of talked about this too, but form first over volume, right? It's not about burning calories. And honestly, if your form isn't appropriate for the movement that you're doing, you're actually missing out on so much of the workout. And I don't want to say you're like wasting time. It's good. You're lifting all of those things, but you're missing out on a lot of what you could be getting from those movements too.
For function, for avoiding injury, and for aesthetics. Like we talked about this offline about like, I used to have this misconception about like, oh, I don't want to look, I'm sorry for whoever I'm offending right now. I don't want to look like bulky, like one of those CrossFit girls. And I had that in my head.
Yeah.
After seeing what they're doing in CrossFit and actually going there, I'm realizing like, oh, they look that way because they're not trained. Like 1, the programming is not hitting their body in a way that supports aesthetic adaptations, but two, their form sucks. So they're overutilizing their traps when they're supposed to be utilizing their back.
Well, it's speed,
or
right?
They're using their biceps when they're supposed to be utilizing, but like
their lats or
whatever,
something.
whatever the thing is, like it's because their form sucks. And the more and more and more you use poor movement patterns, the higher risk now you are of developing an injury or having chronic pain and being like, oh, well, it's just because of my workouts. It's like, you do not need to be in pain while lifting if you are doing it properly.
Yes.
So form first. The other things that we really focus on in terms of progressively overloading would be mind muscle connection. Are you able to feel the muscles you're supposed to feel during that movement? Range of motion and mobility. So as my clients are working on their different movements, I'm always suggesting like, hey, every week, see if you can get a centimeter deeper in your squat, a tiny bit hips further back in your deadlift, a little bit lower with control in your shoulder press, because those sorts of things also are going to help you to get stronger over time. They're going to lead you to better gains in terms of like physique change, but also function is so important for longevity of lifting.
Yeah. And, I was absolutely someone who for many, many years, I absolutely neglected anything to do with a warm up, with mobility, with flexibility, because coming from the bodybuilding world, I strictly trained for aesthetic, right? I didn't give a shit about function. I didn't care. I just was like, is this going to make me look better? And I missed out on so much. If I'm being honest, I think my physique could look very different if I trained smarter and not just harder. And, incorporating mobility and flexibility now, I can feel such a difference in something like my squat. Whereas before I was like, add more weight, add more weight, add more weight, because I'm thinking that's what I need to do to progress. And actually, I can see better progression now at lower weights because I put such an emphasis on my flexibility and my mobility outside of those structured exercise workouts, versus what I used to do. And it's honestly, I look back at old squat videos and I'm embarrassed.
And I think that Jill touched on this a little bit, but tempo too is another big one. So like time under tension on our muscles matter. So you might be able to deadlift crazy, crazy heavy, and then you just drop the bar because you're done that rep. Like I would rather
half a rep.
Yeah, you got to go slow on the eccentric phase, like on the lengthening part of that movement versus the contraction, and really be able to maintain control and I tell clients, make every rep hard. I don't care if your workout feels hard. I don't care if you're sweaty. I don't care how high your heart rate is. I want every rep and every set to feel like the most challenging thing. And then you take a 60-second to 2-minute break and you do it again and make it the next hardest set you've ever had. Right. That's what's going to progressively change your body over time.
And to do that, you cannot say I was bored or I needed to get my workout done, so I only rested for 30 seconds. Does life happen sometimes? Sure. I absolutely have days where I got to speed up my workout a little bit, and that's fine. But typically, you have to honor the appropriate rest period, because if we are going to make every rep truly challenging, and I don't mean, like she said, heart rate, sweating, all of those things, then you're going to miss out, right? And you're actually sending different adaptations and it's different signals when you start to shorten the rest periods, because now you can't lift what you could have, right? If you did rest 2 minutes, whatever it is, right? So we have to make sure that we are breaking that up and honoring the rest period just as much as we are the working part of the movements. And like you said, I definitely used to train for walking out of the gym. I'd be like, oh, that wasn't as good today. Like, I'm not really sweaty. I'm, whatever.
Not sore. Soreness is another one. Everybody strives for soreness. Soreness does not indicate how effective your workout was.
Correct. Right. It's actually, for me, what it was shitty recovery. I didn't allow my body to rest and recover. So I was sore all the time. I wasn't eating enough protein. I wasn't getting enough sleep. I was chronically stressed. And I felt that. And for a beginner, are you going to feel muscle soreness? Absolutely. Right. And those are two different scenarios. But you should not be sore all the time.
You shouldn't be striving for that. That shouldn't be the goal.
Right. And actually it's not training very smart. And you're possibly, again, setting yourself back if you're training just for muscle soreness, because you're honestly asking for an injury. And I know, because I've been down that path too. So let's talk about, we're talking about reps and making them challenging. Let's talk about rep ranges, right? In terms of, actually, I'm going to cut that out.
Yeah.
Do I want to do that?
Good. Yeah. So in terms of rep ranges, like
Okay.
what's going to work for you? We talked about building your workout and what are the 5 big functions that you want to hit. We want to aim to hit a particular rep range during each 4 to 6 week phase. Okay. So that we can be very strategic about progressing. The rep range that is going to work best for you is the one that your body is not adapted to yet. So really anywhere between 3 and 30 reps can be effective in hypertrophy or building muscle, which again, when I say building muscle, you're not going to look like a bodybuilder. We're not trying to get bulky. Like when I say building muscle, I'm saying body recomposition and getting that lean toned look you want. Anywhere between 3 and 30 reps is pretty effective, but you can't do the same rep range all the time. Like if you're just in a body pump class or an Orange Theory class and you're cranking out reps to a song for 2 minutes, like you're getting way more reps than that, first of all. So you're not sending strength signals at all. You're sending endurance signals or cardio signals. But once your body starts to adapt to that, you need to change it. So let's say you've been doing 20 reps per exercise for the last 3 months. Like you would probably see excellent results if you switched and went to like an 8 to 12 rep range for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And 8 to 12 means if you can get 13, 14, 15 reps, you are not going heavy enough. You are not making each rep challenging enough if you are going over that rep range that we're talking about here. So again, anywhere between the 3 and 30 rep range, but you need to very strategically phase in and out of these different rep ranges. Also, this is how I personally enjoy getting cardio and heart health in. Like, I don't love running. I don't like intentional cardio. Do I get a lot of steps? Yes, I think that's important for everybody. But if every 4 to 6 months I put a strength training program together where I maybe am having those higher rep ranges or I'm supersetting my lifts, now I'm also getting heart health benefits along with my muscle gains. Like we do want to be strategic about all of those things. It's not just as simple as, okay, I'm always going to lift in the 8 to 12 rep range for the rest of my life. Like at some point, your body's going to adapt to that just like it did to your group classes.
And I think a good note on that, especially thinking about a good majority of our clients, where you work out and what equipment you have access to matters here, right? In terms of how we approach this personally as coaches. So if somebody is new to lifting and they have 10 and 15 pound dumbbells at home, we can absolutely start there, right? And we can still see some progress initially, but you have to set yourself up for being able to overcome those adaptations, right? If you want to continue seeing progress. And I'm not saying you got to run out and buy a gym membership today. I mean, if you grab some weights and a barbell for at home, is it going to be a game changer? I think so. But ultimately, you just have to know when to progress through that, right? So progressive overload, like Jesse said, isn't always just increasing weight. We can play with that a little bit, but there's a limit to that, right? To what we can do in those with that equipment if we're limited on weights. So I think it's important you don't have to decide all of that right away. You don't have to decide on your gym membership or go right away. And there are times where I work out at home and times where I work out at the gym or I'm traveling, right? And there's going to be variations like that for life here and there, and that's okay. But I think it's important to, and this is the benefit of having a coach, to know when you need to move forward from that. And like Jesse said, if you are training in a 12 to 15 rep range, I don't know, doing bicep curls, and initially those 10 or 15 pound dumbbells are hard for you, and all of a sudden you're pumping out that 15, and then you're, texting on your phone and doing whatever you got to do, but on your rest periods, it's probably time, right? It's probably time to grab some heavier dumbbells. So that's another component of how to approach this, is deciding where are you working out, just along with your frequency, and what equipment you have actually have access to when it comes to building out your program too. So that was my little tangent for that one.
So we've talked about how many days can we work out. We're going to decide which muscle groups, or if we're doing full body or body part splits, or maybe push pull up or lower based on how many days a week we can realistically work out. We've talked about rep ranges. Let's talk about the exercises that we're actually going to be doing during these and how we're going to lay that workout out. So I personally am a big fan, and we both kind of said we do this now. I'm a big fan of kind of finding that middle ground between health, longevity, and physique. I'm not just training for physique. I'm also training for function and to not be in chronic pain because I'm at a desk job and I have 2 kids that I'm nursing and hunched over, so I tend to start with some sort of mobility training that's going to set me up for whatever my big lifts are that day. Then I'm going to do 1 to 2 big compound lifts. So think like powerlifting, a back squat, a big barbell deadlift, bench pressing, pull-ups, the bigger muscle groups that work, or the bigger lifts that work multiple muscle groups at once. Why do I do this? A couple of reasons. One, because again, I value my time. I do not want to be in the gym forever hitting every little muscle group one at a time. In a squat, I'm hitting a lot of muscles. I'm working my whole core. I'm working my quads. I'm working my glutes. In a deadlift, I'm working my entire body. I'm doing this intentionally because the first couple exercises, the first 6, 7 sets that you're doing in your day are going to be the most effective ones. So let's hit all the muscle groups. Second, function-wise, those types of moves are going to train you on how to work your whole body together as a cohesive unit versus...
Wait, can I put an asterisk in here? I want to make sure when you're saying compound lift that we know we are talking about a squat, a deadlift, the push and pull that we were talking about. A compound lift is not reverse lunge to bicep curl. A compound lift.
Yeah, that is what I would call...
Make sure we're clarifying.
That right there is what I would call a waste of your time. Combining multiple movements all together is a waste of your time. Thank you for clarifying. No, compound lifts are your big... And again, you could Google, what do power lifters compete in? That's what I'm talking about here.
Yes.
For the purposes of strength training. We're doing big barbell lifts. Not only are we doing this aesthetically so that we're hitting more muscle groups at once, we're also doing it functionally so we can work our whole body together as one unit.
Including your abs. You hit your abs.
Yes. So like I could sit somebody on a leg press machine or on a leg extension machine and they can push a lot of weight, but they're not going to learn how to brace their core with it. And then they go and tie their shoe and throw their back out. Like I want function for my clients. So we're starting with 1 or 2 big compound lifts. Then we're going to go into more isolated either muscle groups or functions, depending on what your particular goals are. So for us, a lot of women are coming to us for both metabolism and physique. We're adding in a little bit more of those isolated muscle movements there. So that's when we're going to do our leg extension, our hamstring curl machine, our lateral raises for our shoulders, some stuff like that. I also tend to personally incorporate at least 1 or 2 unilateral movements or something that requires some sort of stability. So maybe I'm doing
single leg deadlift,
really high step up with control or a single leg deadlift. Yeah, something like that. Again, for both function and for physique. So, okay, that's kind of how we would structure it. Again, if you're planning your whole week, you're only looking really for most people. Again, if you're very advanced, maybe we need to up the volume a little bit. But for most people, you really only need to hit 10 to 12, maybe 15 hardworking sets per major muscle group. Again, when I say hardworking sets, those first 2 big compound lifts, I'm usually doing 1 or 2 lighter warm-up sets to make sure my body's moving well so that I don't injure myself before loading super heavy for the what I'm calling working sets.
And in my opinion, warm-up typically for me is whatever movement I'm doing. If I'm doing deadlift, I'm just going to warm up with a deadlift, right? I'm not going to warm up with something crazy or fancy or sprints on the treadmill. I'm just going to warm up with some deadlifts. So if I'm doing back, I'm going to warm up with some lighter rows, things like that. And the other thing I wanted to say that a good mindset is like, we talk about building your meals around your protein, right? To set yourself up for success. Protein first, everything else second. Same thing with your workouts. Compound lifts, build them first in your days, and then throw in all of the accessory lifts around them to complement whatever it is, right? You can have a whole glute day. If you want bigger glutes, have a blast, right? Do a more glute-focused workout, but make sure that you're hitting the right number of working sets for these compound lifts first, because you're going to hit everything. Like Jesse said, it's more bang for your buck. It's more efficient. And then you can throw in all the fancy other shit that you want to add into, right?
Yep. And if you're somebody who has had previous injuries, I feel like this is important to address. I've had women be like, no, I'm not doing a barbell back squat because I had a spine fusion or whatever. It doesn't have to be those perfect 3 big lifts that I just said. We're doing some variation of those functions. So maybe you're doing a goblet squat where you're holding a kettlebell by your chest. Maybe we're doing a bench squat where we're sitting to standing for somebody who hasn't really been able to do that well. But in whatever way, we are progressing from what you were used to, from what you used to do to a little bit more advanced version of that over the course of time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you guys can literally buy this workshop for $20 and have the information to build out effective programming forever. An effective workout structure is not screenshotting TikTok and Instagram workouts. And I say this with so much love because I used to do it. I used to think cool, this girl posted a back day and a leg day and an arm day. If I just screenshot all of them, I'll be good. No, they are not putting thought into what they're putting out there. It's just random shit for content. And I say that honestly, I'm going to eat a slice of humble pie. I used to do it. I used to say, whatever, I'm just going to put this out there, right? And it's content, it's helpful, and people love workouts. And I realized it was actually a massive disservice to people that follow me, because I'm like, this isn't doing anything for them. It's the same thing when somebody says, can you calculate my macros? I'm like, yeah, but what is that going to do for you?
What's the context?
Yeah,
right. Like,
it doesn't help you at all.
I personally have been posting my workouts on my story because people request that so much. If I had a beginner who came to me and they have not been working out, or they've been working out 2 days a week, or if I've had somebody who's been overtraining, I would not have them do what I am doing right now, because I'm basing it on what I'm progressing from, not what you're progressing from.
I also think the way that you're sharing is important, because you're showing the mobility that you're doing. You're showing all of the warm-ups that you're doing. You're explaining your programming, and you're walking through it. And I think that's
I'm
important.
Always starting with some sort of hinge, some sort of squat, some sort of push, some sort of pull too.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's thought in it. And that's different, right? The point is that a lot of Instagram people, especially if their social media is solely based on workouts, they're not putting out effective programming when they're putting a workout out to you guys 6 days a week. They're just throwing random shit out for each body part and saying, here you go, right? So that there's no effectiveness behind it. It's not going to get you where you want to be. So I just wanted to throw that out there too. But
I think that's good. Yeah, Brett actually, my husband, said an analogy the other day, because I was talking about just like, oh, it's so annoying because nobody wants to do the basics over and over. They're always looking for like the flashy quick fix. And he was like, yeah, do you think Tiger Woods is out here looking for like the hottest, latest golf swing so that he can be the best? And it's like, no, there isn't such a thing as that. Like, you have to just get really, really good at the basics over and over and over and build on them if you want to be excellent in anything. And this is no different. Like, us learning how to squat, us learning how to hinge, us learning how to do a push-up. Like, these are skills that take time to build. If you watched my workouts, if you watched Jill's workouts every day, you would be bored as all get out, because it's really different versions of the same thing over and over and over, 3 to 4 days a week without fail for 10 to 15 years. Like,
and also that too, I think like when you look at, you're like, oh, this girl does Pilates and I want to look like her, so I'm going to go do Pilates. Or this girl does yoga every day and I want to look, skinny and whatever. Don't be deceived by that, right? And I think it's really important that we don't just go with whatever somebody's physique looks like and think that's the workout I need to do. I actually had somebody, a client of ours, say, what's up with these somatic workouts? Like, what's the benefit? And I'm like, do I go there? Do I do it? There's not this like inherently special thing about all these workouts. There's no fat burning workout. There's no, right? Like, you don't burn more calories just because you're at Orange Theory sprinting in between every set. Actually, we've already talked about that it's actually a huge disservice. But there is nothing that is there's no like secret workout out there that's going to make you get results faster. It's just these basics. And I love putting this message out there, because if you guys take this podcast alone, this episode, not our whole podcast, this episode, and implement it and use the workshop, you probably don't ever need to hire a coach, if I'm being honest with you. Like, this is it. Like, this is it for workouts. Now, in terms of lifestyle, nutrition, behavior change, obviously different conversation, but you can do so much if you approach workouts with this without trying to be fancy or do I don't know, fucking special kickbacks or use the Smith machine, like all the crazy stuff that you see people do on Instagram. It doesn't do anything. That's not the secret to their physique. They are lifting heavy and they are eating protein and they are doing all those other things that it's boring for them to talk about. So they're not telling you about it. So I just wanted to shed some light on the social media impact of that side of things, because I think it's important to not get shiny object syndrome when you're scrolling and trying to make changes, because nothing changes the fact that you have to train this way to see those results that you're looking for ultimately.
I feel like that was it. We did a good job keeping the topic here on something we could talk about for hours. So
I know that was pretty
efficient. All right, guys, that's all we got for today. Until next time,
check yourself before you wreck yourself. That's your job.